Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So the first step in creating a junk journal is to choose what type of journal you want to create. So you can do a soft cover journal, but I prefer hardcover journals, and I usually use an old book when I'm doing a journal. I find that's, for me, the easiest technique, and we'll get on to the ins and outs of things as we go along. I like this old book. I also like that it has an inscription in the front, which is the address, which is in Kent in the UK. And it's actually a beautiful old book. It's very, very old, but I'm still going to chop it up and I'll use some of the pages in this project and other projects. Now, the first decision is how big do you want your junk journal? Before you start anything else, you need to measure your book. So this book is 7.5 inches by just over 5 inches, and that's, it's not a big junk journal. I've got other ones. I'm going to pull this one out as a comparison for you. So this is also made from a hardback book, and you can clearly see it's a lot bigger than this one, which is a little small. Just check on the size of spine you want. Now, my spine on this book is just under 2.5 inches. As a comparison, the green book is 1 inch. So obviously I'm going to fit more signatures in the wider spined one and less in the thin spine. So you need to work out how many signatures you want. And you might do that based on subject matter. So you just might be doing a junk journal, which is a random sort of junk journal on all sorts of topics you might want to write about or put photographs about in your journal. Then again, you might have a specific topic in mind. I'm going to use this junk journal as a journal all about the different places I've travelled to. So I want it fairly chunky, which is why I've chosen this thick spine book. And I also like that it's not as big in terms of size of this one here. So this is one I'm working on at the moment. If you've watched my YouTube videos, you've probably seen me journaling in this, and you can see already that it's fanning out and it's never going to close up again. The spine on this particular book it's about 2 inches, so the one I'm going to use is a little bit bigger. Once you've decided that, you need to write down those measurements, because that's going to be the size of your signatures. So for me, 7.5 by 5 inch. So for now, I'm going to put the book away and move on to the signatures, because the book is the last thing that you need to prepare. The next step in the process is to create signatures for your book. Now, signatures are not at all scary, so I'll show you what they are. When you look at a normal book, and just a published book, you'll often see the pages are sort of grouped in sections. So they all are tied into one section. So this book here, this one I've made, has got 3 signatures that you can see. 1, 2, 3. And all a signature is when you fold 2 or more pieces with each other, you've created a signature. It's pretty simple. Now we need some paper to create signatures out of, and you can create signatures out of anything, even copy paper. It doesn't matter. It's up to you, whatever you've got lying around. I've got some paper here that I've pulled from a book about watercolour flowering. So I don't know which one that's called, but I thought that was really pretty. You might want to stick to a colour theme. You might want to stick to, all the one book pages, or you can create, signatures with book pages, whatever you like. This is also a little book which has got lots of botanical images in it, so I'm going to take one of those, and while I do that, I thought I'd show you how I do that so that I get it out without actually ruining too much of the book or the other pages in the book. So this is only a tiny book, but I will use some of these pages in my journal as well. So a signature is sewn, and this is a good example. Let's go to the centre of this. See, I'll show you. This particular book has signatures in it. You can see here that that part is a signature, and then there's another signature over this side, and the centre of each signature is sewn in. Find the centre of the signatures, or one of the signatures in the book you're using, and just cut or clip with your scissors the binding. So this is the binding thread, and we'll be binding when we put the signatures into our junk journal. But for now, just do that, and you'll find that they'll just then pull out quite easily, just for those signatures, each individual one. If you don't want to do that, or if it's a bigger book where you don't mind if the pages are cut, you can just take a craft knife and just pull it through the centre of the book. I've got these beautiful old pages which are from an old dictionary that I own, and they're just divine, so I'll definitely be using some of those as base pages. These here are gorgeous images from Daphne's Diary, which is a magazine. I'm sure some of you probably have heard about Daphne's Diary, and they're just beautiful images, antique mannequins and beautiful things. So I rescued a couple of those from the last one I bought. I will use some of those. And then the other thing you can use is scrapbooking paper. And what I like about some of these is, and the reason that I bought them is, it's actually got lines on them. So you could use this as your journaling spots. To make a signature, obviously I need to cut the paper down to size. And your size will be different depending on your book measurement, but it's basically going to be double the width of what you've measured. So you're going to be doubling the width because you're going to be folding the page, and you're going to be keeping the height the same. So when you're choosing what parts of your paper and how to cut your paper, if you need to cut it down, you need to take that into consideration. So looking at the front of the page, in this case it's double-sided, I'm looking at the back. I like all this writing rather than this plainer stuff up here. I like the tag, the world, so I'm going to cut mine from the bottom up. Also, when you're cutting your pages, remember, if you want the text to go a certain way, that's the direction that you need to position your page. So let's take this one as an example. If this was just going to be a page in my journal, I would want to see the ads up the right way. So I wouldn't want to be flipping my journal over like this. It would be fine, but I prefer with this paper to avoid that. Let's talk about what I've just done. So I've taken the paper that I had and I've cut it. So with this one, it's actually got a label on the bottom. So I've made sure that I've cut that off. But don't get rid of that, because you can use that to create tabs or just as decoration on your page. I mean, it's a junk journal, and a lot of people I know don't even use scrapbooking paper in their junk journals. I just like that it's quite a good substrate to work on, or a base to work on. I've taken the top off, and I've taken the side off, and then I've scored it in the centre. So I've created the beginning of my first signature. And then with the second map page, remember I said that I liked the tag on this side, and I like this one up here too, but when I went to cut it, I realized that I have to shorten it, so I cut the top off, so I retained both of these, and if I'd cut this side off, I would have lost that bit completely. So I opted instead to have this piece here, and I took the side of it off, and again I've just used my scoreboard to score it down the center, and that's the beginning of my signature. So in terms of number of pages in your signature, it's really up to you how many you put within each signature. I would think maybe 5 or 6, but it's probably best to determine it based on the weight of each paper. So as you go and add more into a signature, because remember this is just one signature, we're going to be making probably 5 signatures for this journal. So you need to make sure that, like, you'll feel it. And when I pull this signature together, I'll show you what I mean by that. So if we look at this piece here, this is almost the perfect size for my book. I'm just going to have to trim maybe 1/8 of an inch off the top, but in terms of width, it's almost perfect. And if I put it on the outside, I'll show you. It's actually a tiny bit short, maybe 1/4 of an inch, maybe a bit less than 1/4 of an inch, but that's okay. They don't have to all meet neatly at the end. So you will find as you go through that that's just going to happen. Your signatures are probably not going to stay neat on the end. If you don't like this look, then you can trim them all down. So you would put all that back into the cutter and trim it down. But to me, that's the part of junk journaling that I like, that everything's a bit raggedy and a bit messy. So just embrace that would be my advice. Just embrace what you've got and don't worry about the fact that they don't overlap. Because some of the pages that I put in are not going to be full pages, and they're not going to be full this way or this way. So I'm just going to add a couple more and give you a few more examples of that. Alright, so I've cut down some more papers. So I've got my original papers. Don't know where the other one's gone. Oh, here it is. And I'm going to cut down. I did trim roughly 1/4 of an inch or something off that. I didn't measure. I'm not great on measurement, but I managed to get it pretty much spot on. And then I've cut down some other papers that I want to put into this signature. Let's see if they all fit. So this is the dictionary page, and I've just got my scoreboard out and I'm going to score it. So I could score it so that some of the pages on one side, some was on the other. I could score it in the centre. I think I'm going to score it in the centre. So I'm just going to take the scoreboard, and it's dictionary page and it's very old. So it's very thin, so I'm just barely touching that to get a score line on that. You could even fold it. In fact, I will be folding some because some are just too thin. And then just gently score along it. That gives you a bit of a crisper edge. So you'll see when I put this into the signatures now that it's not as wide as the pages. But that's okay. This is what I'm talking about. Embrace the imperfect. This here, I like this one. It's a nice vintage mannequin. It's from the Daphne's Diary. It's got some pretty things on the back. I'll probably end up covering some of the things that are on here, even on the front. And I didn't like the image that was here, so I've actually trimmed it down so it's no longer the right height. So it's going to be long and skinny, and I'm just going to put it in and eyeball where it might go. Okay, so I'm just eyeballing that, and I'm going to fold it around about the correct position. And because it's paper, it is thin too. It's, you know, not as thin as some magazine paper, and it's not shiny, which I do like that. It's actually a matte finish. And now I've got that little bit on the bottom. So this is going to go in here like this. And then I'm just going to take a ruler, put it along the edge of the paper. I'm going to tear that off. Just create a bit of a different edge. So that's going in the bin, and there you go. I've got another piece. Now I can make that sit at the bottom or the top or the centre. It doesn't matter. I'll work that out when I go to sew the signature together. I've got another Daphne's Diary page here. I cut that. Probably needs a little trim off the top. And again, I'm just going to work out where I want to fold that. So I'm probably going to have to give up some of that. Yep, okay, so I'm just going to fold that in half. Just finger fold that because it's paper, it folds really easily. I'm not putting them in order yet. Again, I need to trim some of this off the top, so I'll take that to the cutter and do that in a moment when I've got the signature together. Then there's this beautiful one, which I absolutely think is gorgeous, and it's the right height. And I love the ballet slippers. I love everything about this one. But it's going to be too long. So I need to be back here. And I've got all of that needs to trim off. I don't want to lose my ballet slippers. I'll probably lose some of this bottom piece, a bit of that mannequin at the bottom, but that's okay. I'm just going to, again, tear it. And then see how we're going on size. So it's still too big, so I'm going to have to tear some of it off the end. Or cut some of it off the end. I might actually tear it. Where do I need to be? Okay. I'm just going to give that a tear because I want to keep the beautiful ballet slippers. Okay, and then I'll fold that in half. I do love mannequins. I have a number of mannequins. I haven't got a really old proper one. I wish I did have. Some of the ones in here would be lovely. And I'm going to have to trim a little bit more of that. That's fine. Now this here is the watercolour flower page. I've trimmed it down at the top because I wanted to keep this whole image of the iris. And on the back it was just all watercolour. So that's worked out quite well. And it's obviously not as wide, but I'm going to sit it to one side in the book. So I might trim down a little bit off that. So you really need to find where you want these things to go. So again, I'm using the scoreboard because it's nice and thick, this paper. So I'm just going to probably trim a little bit off there when I get to the cutter. And I might take, need to be at 4 1/4. So I might take all of this white space off here actually. So if I take that off, and I'm just going to score it so I know where to trim it, lightly give it a score so I've got a line. And then I need 4 1/4. So if I come across 1 inch, and then 4 1/4 will be to 5 1/4 inches. And then I might take another 1/4 inch off this side. You don't have to fiddle around like I am doing everything. You can just go and chop yours and hope for the best. But I want to enhance some of these images. I want the whole image on the page. So I've come across 1 1/4, and I need to go 4 1/4, so that's 5 1/2. So my score line, the page, is going to be here. So this is going to sit, when I take those edges off, this is going to sit like that. So it's going to have this little piece on the other side of the book. I'll put that in here and show you what I mean. So when you're turning over your book, you're going to come across this little flap like that, and that's fine. That gives more interest. And then I've got the map page, which we go back to our measurement. That's also a little bit big, and I'm going to just fold that in half as well. It's the right height. And again, the map page is very thin, so you can score it, but it folds really easily because it's quite thin. So now I'm just going to go back to my trimmer, put it all together and see what I need to trim off. Here are all my pages that I'm going to put in this one signature. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm actually going to turn this the other way so that the map is on the outside. I think that that's prettier, and that's going to be the front of this particular signature. And then I'm just going to start by putting some things in. Now I would suggest that you mix up between the pages, like don't have all the thick pages and then all the thin pages. Mix it around a bit so that it's not so even and it looks a bit more junky. I'm going to put another Daphne's Diary page in here. So that's that watercolour paper. I've just trimmed the edge off it again. Here's the beautiful mannequin. For some reason I don't like them showing to the right. I like them showing to the left. Personal preference, up to you. This is the page from the flower book. And then I've got the map page. Oh, upside down. So what you also need to decide is, because this is a map, one side is going to be upside down. So if you want the, you determine which one you want up the right way, because at some point you're going to have things that are upside down, and that's fine too. So that is quite thick in terms of a signature. I need to trim that, haven't trimmed that map page down far enough, so I'm going to have to get back and do that. But maybe I can just add one more, because I really like this floral and this writing that's all got different colours on it. And I just might find another strong piece of, a piece of scrapbooking paper. This is very thick, this cardstock. And I think that that's better, because this is where you're going to tie off your signatures in the centre of the book. So having a sturdy piece of paper at the centre is not such a bad idea. And I'm just going to show you an example in this book here. So I have just 3 signatures in this book, but if I look in the centre, let's see what I've done. So I've got this heavy piece of craft stock in the centre, because when you put your thread and tie it up and actually bind your book, this is called, when you put your signatures together and put them into the book, you'll probably want something that's quite sturdy in the centre. Let's look at this one. Yes, so I've used this thick piece of scrapbook paper. In fact, I think that's 2 pieces. Yes, I had 2 half pieces, so I used it all by doing a half and a half and sticking them together in the centre. So it's nice and strong, so that when you're pulling and tying your knot, you've got a hard surface. If you use like the old dictionary page, it might actually just rip through. So consider that as well when you're putting your signatures together. I've cut that paper down so it fits into the centre. It's slightly off. You can see I've got raggedy edges, but that's okay. And that's going to be my first signature of this particular book. So let's count how many we've got. I have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages in this signature. So in terms of surfaces to use, 10 pages divided in half, I've got 20, so I'm going to have 20 pages. And then I've got front and back, so altogether that's 40 surfaces that I'm going to have to journal on and write on and add photos or whatever it is that I want to do. So that's a good start. So in terms of thickness, that feels like a good thickness to me. It's not huge, it's not too thin. There's a mix of papers, and as I said, because some of these papers are thinner, for example the dictionary page or the Daphne's diary, it's meant that it's not bulky. If I had 10 pieces of scrapbooking paper all together, it would be much bulkier in this, and I just don't think that that would work. This, to me, is quite a good size. So the next step in the process is to go through and make the extra signatures. So I'm going to do that off camera. I've got another 4 signatures I need to pull together, and then we'll go to the next stage. So until then, I hope you've enjoyed that, and this is Deborah, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.